Equilume is the world leader in the research and development of lighting solutions that maximise the horse's health, performance and overall well-being. The Equilume stable lights and casual light masks are game changers for performance horses by replicating natural sunlight and allowing them to receive the optimum level of biologically effective light, whether they are stabled, out grazing or travelling to competition. Scientifically developed Equilume lighting products support the horse's body clock, positively influencing mood and behaviour while helping to maintain muscle tone, strengthen immunity and ensure a sleek and shiny coat. Go to equilume.com for more information.
Oh God, it's so exciting. Happy Hail Bob Day.
It is a happy Hail Bob Day.
Hello, the Curse of Dam.
It's the best finishing score we've seen at 5-star level.
That was our elo coming into the competition.
Eventing manager is back.
Best show that we have, Alphabetti Spaghetti.
Looking forward to seeing quality horses.
Still a great day for Ireland.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
I mean, you're a bit of an eventing geek just like us.
And it's time to get on with the show. Welcome to the Equiratings Eventing podcast, and listeners, we have got an Equilume special for you because we have been working with Equilume for a little while and we wanted to tell you more about the science so that you understand exactly what it is and how it works. So we are hopefully going to do that in this show. Sam Watson is with me. Sam, I'm going to come to you first because it is a very topical bit of conversation, isn't it? You know, the days are getting shorter, winter is very much basically here or incoming quickly. And this is a good time, I feel, to be talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I have electricians, running around the country at the moment. I'm trying to get hold of them, and they're in, and we've been putting in more lights because it is literally brightening up our horses' lives, and that's what it's all about. I think we've become so much more aware of light and the power of it since smartphones have entered our life. You know, we know that looking at them at the wrong time, we know that it genuinely impacts our body clock. And anyone who's involved with breeding or performance or just growth and development of horses, wherever you sit in the chain, you want your horses feeling good mentally and then being able to have that cycle of like that stress and rest recovery cycle that I talk about all the time, that they sleep well and that they are fully awake and alive when daytime is there as well. So absolutely, this time of year, we just can feel ourselves entering a period of 5 months of things being a bit gloomier. So thank you, Equilume, for coming along. You know, as well as the horses, for Sparks and myself to work under a bit more brightness and a kind of enriched kind of stable, like we're dying to get into the stables. We have envy looking out at them at kind of 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evenings these days, looking at the horses still having bright quality light while we're sort of in a dusk state. So it's cool for humans and horses.
I'm looking forward to digging a little bit beneath the science because there is so much science behind it. And don't get me wrong, listeners, we're probably not going to be able to cover it all in this 30-40 minute podcast, but hopefully it will give you a really good idea as to how it works and just how it can enhance health, performance and well-being as well. Joining us to give us that science is none other than Dr. Barbara Murphy, who is the head of equine science at the University College Dublin. Barbara, thank you so much for coming on the show. And it is good to have you with us. Just tell us a bit about your work at UCD and also how that then links to Equilume.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you. Hi, Sam. Great to be here with you this afternoon. So I was very lucky enough to do a PhD studying chronobiology, which is basically the science of biological timekeeping. And at its crux is that we all have a biological clock. And this clock operates in every single cell of our bodies and of our horses' bodies, in our dogs' bodies, in our cats' bodies. And the reason for this is because basically all life on our planet evolved over 4 billion years with the most powerful evolutionary driving force being the light and the dark cycles. So as all organisms started to learn how to survive on our planet, the ones that figured out if they were active by day and asleep by night, or if they were in tune with the changing 24-hour light-dark cycles, and also the annual 365-day seasonal changes in light, then those were the ones that had the most success and they survived. And as species evolved, we eventually came to the top of that species evolution. But basically, the important thing about light and what I became interested in was that we now know that not all light has the same effect on our body. And just because you have a light that's bright enough to be able to see or to be able to read a book on a dark day, it's a different type of light that keeps our biological clock ticking regularly in tune with the environment. And if anybody thinks about the color of the sky on a sunny day, and you look up and you see a lovely blue sky, the reason it's blue is because natural sunlight and natural daylight has a really high component of blue light. And we've realized through very cool scientific experiments by many other researchers around the world that mammals have a set of receptors at the back of their eyes that are primarily stimulated by blue light. So if there is blue in your light, you're more likely to be alert by day, your immune levels are going to be stronger, your hormone rhythms are going to be better. And then on the opposite side, we want an absence of blue light at night in order to be able to rest, to recover, to sleep. So that's why, as Sam mentioned, you don't want to look at your blue light screens during the nighttime and shut off Netflix at 11, 12 o'clock because you need to avoid that blue light stimulation. And we just tried to figure out a way at UCD to be able to provide blue light to horses wherever they go, whether they are traveling, whether they are out in a field on dark winter nights, whether they are in their stables, and to be able to design solutions that strengthened the horse's circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is a 24-hour rhythm, and it's one of the strongest outputs from our biological clock. So the stronger your clock is, the louder it ticks, the healthier the animal is. The more rested they are at night, the better able they are to perform by day. And this is not just true of our horses, but it's very much true of humans as well. Just like Sam mentioned, the envy at looking out at his stables, it's absolutely true. And we don't treat ourselves oftentimes as well as we treat our horses.
No, that's a very good point, actually. I'm sat here thinking, God, all of that sounds brilliant. Sign me up. Sam, how did your sort of understanding of this come about? How much did you know before your link with Equilume, and how have you seen that impact the horses in terms of their day-to-day?
So I think this quality of sleep is massive, and always has been on my radar, and it's always been something that I've felt as well. A kind of a daily rhythm. I've always felt that I've had one myself. I've always felt that I've been more productive at certain times of the day, and that there's a kind of a pattern to that. And so the first thing for me when I will explore any new performance tool is, does it make sense? And then obviously I love the fact that there's proper science backing it up as well. So sometimes if I, it might not make as much sense, or I might not know much about that area, but I know there's an awful lot of science backing it up. I can go, okay, I can trust this. And it does make sense when you get into it. I think it makes sense to anyone when you get into it. So I definitely wanted to try it out, because one of the other things that I felt and realized is, being someone who rides a lot of very blood horses, a lot of horses with thoroughbred, and a lot of horses by puissance have a reputation for being quite sharp. One of the realizations I made on my journey as an athlete, I used to think, if I tire these horses out and maybe don't feed them as much, they'll behave better. And it doesn't work. It has the opposite effect, because you think about yourself. If you know someone who's a little bit kind of grouchy and maybe sharp temperament wise, someone that you go, don't get on the wrong side of old Auntie Jean there. She'll snap back at you. Or a grumpy uncle or something like that. If you underfeed them, or if they don't get enough sleep, they're worse. That's what you got to think. You don't tire a grumpy person out or anything like that. So I had found that from my horses that were a little bit lethargic, Imperial Sky, to my horses that were very sharp and buzzy, Art of Highlight, Talisman, horses like that, I felt they could all benefit. And I have seen that they have all benefited from this routine. And I think this is what doesn't always make sense to people. People will hear this and go, this is sounds in sales mode, going, it makes the grumpy horses happier, or quieter, and it makes the quiet horses have more energy. Like, how does the same thing do both? But it's helping both in the same way, and that gets us all back on track. We all have different reactions when we're overstressed, underrested, when we feel a little bit off in our rhythm, or we missed a few nights sleep and we're trying to get back on track. We all feel a bit off kilter. And so that, from a performance point of view, I knew that could help, and that has helped. I think that the science side around the light, I think, and what Barbara's talking about how we as animals, like, this is something I'll never fully understand because I'm not a scientist of that, but how we've all developed. But I can see that their coats are incredible now. We are in October, middle of October now. The Leon Po, these are events I've been used to going to, the Leon Po, Buccalo, and always having to clip the horses. And, we'd struggle to get any hair off them. And they just are gleaming. It's mad, but it's great, that the horses, because it's always a sign, like the trainers, racehorse trainers will always talk about it. Oh, the horse is coming in their coat. It really has a synergy and a correlation with how they feel. Like, they're jumping out of their skin and they're beaming out of their skin. These are physical signs of the horses looking and feeling great. So that is there, and that's working well, and that has to be light influenced, because that's only happened since I've started working with the Equilume lights. And it happened, to be honest, I put the lights in I think January a couple of seasons ago, and I would be lying if I said I noticed a huge change straight away, which again makes sense because it takes a while for us, for these changes to take place, to adapt. But by the autumn of that year, having had a season under the lights, that was, the change. Then it was really, really massive. I felt there were benefits straight away, but Imperial Sky's energy was changing really that was quite a quick change. But the coats took a season, but it's a massive change.
I think that's really interesting. We'll talk about the sort of the scales of some of those changes that you can expect in a moment. Barbara, I wanted to ask you, where Sam is talking about the lights there, it's really important, isn't it, to still have seasons, you're not saying, we're going to turn the lights on and never turn them off. There is a real science behind that as well, that is natural, wholly natural too.
Absolutely. And horses are particularly seasonal. Anybody who breeds horses know they have a reproductive active time and an off time. Anyone who's involved with show horses or competition horses knows you got to clip the coats in the winter at a specific time. And it's not a good idea to keep horses under a constant regime. Nothing in nature or in their environment that they came from was constant. It was fluctuating. And so they need to see a long day after having seen a shorter winter day to respond again. So it's really important when designing lighting programs, which is what we have done, is that you're able to take this into account. And just as a kind of an analogy, in bovine production and in dairy cows, for example, they have been studying lighting in the dairy cow for many, many decades, because they know that they have to give the lactating cow, a break from long day lighting, which is normally associated with greater production of milk, but they've got it down to 42 days is the optimum time that we show these cows winter. You dry them off and then they produce just as much milk the next year. But if you kept going and kept them under the same lighting, you wouldn't get that response. So definitely seasonality is important, and you have to respect that and allow it. But it doesn't mean you can't optimize it. It doesn't mean you have to give a horse 5 months of dark, gloomy winter days in Ireland, England, or wherever you are in the world. You can limit their winter, but still allow them to have that kind of seasonal change. And it doesn't mean it takes away from their performance. I mean, just because a horse gets a coat at a particular time of year, that's natural. That's a natural protective effect to the colder winter nights, and is a good thing. You want to get to see a change in coat over the year, but they don't need to turn into shaggy Shetland ponies that you need to clip regularly. And the other point I just wanted to come back to, in how it's so interesting and cool to hear Sam say that he's seen different effects in different horses, that a lethargic horse became more peppy and a sharp horse seemed to become more calm and more focused. And that really is down to individual differences. And when you're not feeling good, some people will just slow down and get lethargic. Other people will become irritable and reactive. And we know in humans, seasonal affective disorder is a big thing. People do get depressed in the winter because you have an absence of sunlight. And if you're working in offices, you have poor indoor lighting. And then the only time you do actually look at blue enriched light is when late at night looking at a phone screen, which is completely the opposite to how your body works. So what happens when you give a horse blue enriched light by day is they have a higher level of the happiness hormone, serotonin, because you suppress a hormone called melatonin by day, allowing there to be more serotonin, which makes them feel better. And then at nighttime, you allow the either darkness if they're out in the paddock, or red light if they're under one of our stable lights, which allows melatonin to rise and allows them to get rest again. But it's that regularly fluctuating light and dark, on and off, that keeps them feeling good. And we know it enhances our own mood, and there's light boxes available for humans to put beside your desk in order to keep you feeling good by day. So it's very similar to that.
I find that fascinating. So how do you actually put that into practice then? Because I imagine if you've got a horse that you're getting fit for badminton, for example, or if you've got a horse that actually you want to go to Poe, to the 5-star at the end of October, it falls very late at the end of October, that actually this is something that is extremely powerful. But how do you actually use it? How does it work?
Perfect. Yeah, Nicole, and you've hit the nail on the head. It is, I think, actually particularly in eventing, is particularly the autumn events, is where we can really take advantage, in that we know that the days started to get shorter towards the end of the summer. And I have my horses on the stable lights on what they call the circa annual program, and that just works. That's basically saying we're going to mimic what's naturally happening in Ireland anyway. We're just going to ensure that there's, that the quality of the light, that blue enriched light, that the higher quality is there. And for some of the horses, in fact, nearly all of my horses, because I didn't do any competing in October, circa annual has been perfect. I've not had to alter it. But if I was going to Poe, what I would do is I would step in towards the end of the summer and actually just keep them. I'd set their lights to long day. So we're going to prolong that summer, because in Ireland we have the advantage to doing it. And we'll, as in, there's plenty of winter to work with. We're going to have plenty of time to give them a winter.
Sure that,
once Poe is over. So we switch them onto long day, so that the days don't start to get shorter, and they don't start thinking, right, it's time to shut down. We keep them well rugged up and things like that. All the things that we do normally. But I think a lot of people would be going, my God, I rug my horses really well. I don't have them out in the field getting cold and things like that. But his coat looks awful by the time October comes around. Even for some horses, mid to late September, the coat's looking bad. I wanted to take them to Osberton, to Ballindennis, to Blenheim, wherever it was, but the coat was going. He was looking brilliant 2 weeks ago, doesn't look brilliant now. That's because they know winter's coming. The nights have already started shortening. So we step in, stop that process happening as far as they're concerned. And then once Poe has happened, we can start to get that gradual increase. Now, the way I like to do that is I like to tell them, okay, I change the date on my clock to be now tell them that it's the end of the summer, and let those nights gradually get longer. And I still have 2 months. So whether it's by the time they get to December and January, that's where they're going to be on those fully shortened days. I loved what Barbara was saying about the cattle, that it's been worked out 42 days is what you need. I think we're all guilty of saying that there's still a debate about how much time off to give a horse. And it's not black and white. Some people be like, oh, you don't give them a break. Breaks aren't good for them. Keep them working. And some people will say, oh no, they need a break, and they'll give them 3 or 4 months. And the answer is there is an optimal period, and it takes a long time to figure that out by ourselves. But obviously the more people that are doing it, and that's why we're always talking to each other, and that's why we're using science to try and do it. My competition horses have a slightly shorter amount of time off, but they still get it than the younger horses who, they a couple of months for them I feel does do them benefit and things like that. The other thing that you get from as you're sort of keeping them up on those longer days towards the end of the season is you're keeping that, improved immunity there as well, that they're healthier. Barbara will have more on that, but that again has been, a huge benefit. Like having the horses, and okay, I've always kind of prided myself on the health being good. And I think we all do. We all like to think that we have the healthiest yards in the world. But the horses have been great, and that allows them, like the muscle on the horses at the moment. And again, it's a combination thing. It's how we feed them, it's how we work them. But again, it's I've never had top line on my horses like I have on them now. And I think A, they're resting better, B, they're putting more into their work during the day, but they are healthier. Their muscles are able to do, like their system is doing what their system is designed to do. It's in basically optimal performance mode. So that's cool. And then, then the horses that aren't, back to the seasoning, sorry, Nicole. So I've covered the kind of that Le Leon Poe type horse who needs to compete later in the season. What we're going to do for a horse like Flamenco, who went to the Olympics, and then we decided not to do a late, that we decided that would be enough for him, but he's already back in work. He's still going to be on like having his winter until basically December. So from October, November, the nights are long enough to be winter, like as far as he's concerned, he's still under the lights, so that his 12 hours or 12 and a half hours of daytime is really high quality, but he has that red light on for 11 and a half hours, making sure he's having winter. And then we'll slowly take him out of winter. So we'll tell the lights that it's mid-February when it's mid-December, and we'll just be 2 months ahead of the game, and he'll slowly come out, which means that by the time March comes around and he's back competing, he's going to be in kind of in a great place, coat-wise, health-wise, performance-wise.
I love this because we're touching on all of the different benefits that seem to be cropping up in various different areas. And I guess they are all linked, Barbara, but you've got your sort of they're happier, they're healthy, and happiness is a big point. We all want our horses to be happy, and actually this is a big part of it as well, and can have a real influence. They're healthier, their immune systems. I find that bit really interesting because actually, yes, it links to their performance, but a happy and healthy horse, anybody can take that regardless of how high a level they are competing at as well. And the immunity side of it is really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And people are kind of think, how can you have one environmental cue and it affects so many different biological systems or so many aspects of an animal's body? And I can't stress how much that the light that enters the eye goes a lot further than just the eye. It immediately gets sent, particularly when blue light enters the eye, it immediately stimulates little neurons that go to the brain, and a very important part of the brain, which is our master clock, in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. And from there, that information is taken by this master clock, and the rhythmical time of day information is sent throughout the body to every single organ. Every single cell receives that information. The louder the signal, the better it is that the cells are able to use that information to turn genes on and off with a 24-hour rhythm. And it just hard to explain the importance of how rhythmicity and the ability of genes to go up at one time of the day and down at another time of the day can influence things like how fast a soft tissue injury will take to heal, how fast the cells will take to regenerate. And all of this is controlled by circadian rhythms. So we know that the clock in your cells controls how fast cells divide and replicate. So it makes sense then when we hear reports from vets and from training establishments where they've found that they've used a lot less antibiotics in the last season, or that injuries that would normal little cuts and scrapes that horses get, whether they're racing or show jumping or eventing, that would normally maybe blow up into an infection, heals a lot faster, which is really, really important. And coupled with that is just the ability of the horse to feel better when it's, and Sam mentioned top line, and that's one of the things that we hear about quite a lot, is that muscle regeneration and repair. And we did a lot of research showing how important the circadian clock and your biological clock is in the ability of muscle to regenerate at night when the animal is resting. So top lines are something that we hear from a lot of people who've started to use these products in their training. The other thing that I just wanted to touch back on was how, we talk about how important it is to give horses a break during the year, whether it be from, intense training or a rest outside of the competition season. And while you can give them a break from the training and the exercise intensity, it doesn't mean they need a break from quality light. And one of the things that we have seen, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere, in the thoroughbred sector, they like to spell their horses for 6 weeks. As they're training young horses, they'll give them a break. And I know a lot of people do it in the sport horse world too. But that would mean they would turn them out, rough them off, and let them out in a paddock for 6 weeks, giving them a break. But if you do that, but you leave a blue light mask on, say it's autumn or it's winter time and it's very dark outside, or they're getting stable rest and they're under a stable light, it means that they won't lose that important muscle that has been built up in training. And what it allows people to do is the horses will transition back into a full work regime after their rest period a lot faster, without the increased risk of any injuries as they come back. So they don't lose that tone. And we've had a lot of reports from physiotherapists who work with horses in rehab that they're astounded that by using the lights, even the horse he might be out for a season, and, a lot of people might not think about putting lights over them because they're not working them, but it helps with their recovery and it helps with their return to full work.
Have you found that, Sam, with yours?
Yeah, thankfully I've only had one kind of case study, I suppose. This was earlier. This was before, this was when I first put in the lights. But the scan, that when you're scanning a horse and you're looking for that sort of regeneration to go on, that's what the vets are looking for. Is they're looking for the progress of healing. And you're generally looking at them sort of every 6 weeks, and at the 6 week scan you're seeing where you should be after 3 months, and you're going, why are we nearly, why are things repairing this well and like this, and again I just think it does make sense, like the athlete, having been involved with an Olympic program, we get access to all of the human athletes. And they don't say to you, once you get injured, don't worry about your sleep. Like it's nearly more important. It's just as important, as when you're in full work, because your body is still under a level of stress, which is it's trying to work to repair things. So you don't want your body shutting down. You don't want any of that quality of, again, whether it's nutrition, whether it's hydration, or whether it is sleep and that circadian rhythm, that you want it all to be optimized and working at its full capacity.
In terms of timescales, because obviously we've looked at the change in their coats, Sam, you said, sort of came about in a season, and obviously you can't expect to use something and immediately see the benefit. It doesn't necessarily work like that. It takes a while to embed in. But Barbara, there have been cases, and I know that we spoke to Liz Halliday Sharp, I think it was, earlier on this year with, and very much she said she's got a horse called Cooley HHS Cal Maria, who is one of the most talented horses she's ever had, but really tricky. And she'd been talking about this and thought, I'm going to give it a go, and put one of the Cashel light masks on. And the horse, instantly, she could see a change in her. And I find that side of it really interesting as well. And from your perspective, must be fascinating.
It really is. And I wish I could say, yes, we've done experiments and that's what happens. But we know that behavior is affected quite quickly. It's just like, when you wake up and you've had a week of maybe dark, wet, cloudy days, and the sun is shining, and you just get out of bed and you go, oh my God, I just feel a little bit better. It does have that sort of an effect. But her experience was incredible. And one of our colleagues was in the stable with her and saw the mask being put on the horse, and this quite peppy horse, apparently she just lowered her head to the floor and just got sleepy and just looked so calm. And like, she was surprised, and I must say I was surprised too. I mean, we've heard a lot of reports of horses that in some cases might have had some form of stereotypic behavior, might have been box walkers or a little bit of weaving and a little bit, and we've seen reductions. We've heard a lot of reports from stud farms where they use the masks on their brood mares, and the staff that look after the herd of mares that have been there for years and years and years would report that mare would never let us touch her foal. And this season we can handle her, and she's so much more laid back since we start using the masks. So we hear that a lot. I'm working hard to try and put solid science behind these observations. And of course, it's hard to get a group of horses that all display the same sort of characteristics and behave in the same way to be able to do a proper controlled trial. But we're working on each one of them. But when you get enough similar types of feedback from trainers and riders, in not just in the eventing world, but in multiple other disciplines that keep pointing to the same behavior improvements, you can't ignore that. And again, it makes sense. But watch this space, because I'll definitely be putting some hard science behind those observations.
I would find that really, that there seems to have been a number of, I think Philip Dutton has said something similar, of very much, he can see his horses responding. I'm sure we've even had it, in horses loading into trailers and lorries as well in the past. I'd like to ask you about obtainability, because obviously, Sam, you're a professional event rider. This all sounds really, really scientific. It is about marginal gains, yes, but it's also about making your horse as happy and as healthy as possible. If people aren't in a position to go and fill out their entire stable block with lights, what can they do, Barbara, in terms of being able to access the kind of effect in an affordable way and be able to experience that with their horses at home?
Well, I mean, the stable light is great, and it is an infrastructure change that you put in next time you want to upgrade and have more energy efficient lighting, because it's all LED light. So it is very cost effective and it's fully automated. But not everybody can do that. And you might be boarding your horse somewhere, or you move them around. And that's specifically why we designed the Cashel light mask. What it basically does is the horse can wear it whenever they're not being ridden. The light comes on at 8 in the morning, a blue light just over one eye, and it turns off at 11 o'clock. So they get 15 hours of a long day length of good quality light. And I mean, my original research and where this all started was showing that we don't have to give light to both eyes. We have redundancy. One eye is all it takes to have all of these effects throughout the body because of the signal and the neural pathway between the eye and the brain. So by wearing a Cashel mask, wherever they are and when they're traveling, you're going to see all of these benefits. And Philip Dutton started off with just the cashel masks when he was considering whether it was worth putting them into all of his stables. And that's where he saw his results. And the one that stuck out to me was improved trainability or greater focus in some of his top horses when they were being ridden during exercise. And that's like a cognitive improvement. And we're hoping that we're going to do some studies in relation to this with some universities in the United Kingdom, at home with you guys, Nicole, in the UK in the coming year, to show that if their sleep behavior is improved and they get more consolidated sleep, and bear in mind, horses don't need that much sleep. They just need about 2.5 to 3 hours of actually time asleep, but the rest period and the light that's over them at nighttime allows their body to regenerate. So they don't actually need to be flat out snoring. Their body needs to be in regeneration mode. And they can do that by just being in good darkness. Don't turn on white lights at night, and let them have their cashel light mask, which can be recharged once a week and has a pretty long lifespan.
It feels, when put like that, it feels like actually something that, whether you are a professional looking for those marginal gains, whether you're somebody that has a horse at home that, is their pride and joy, but who, is very much, perhaps is a mare that they really notice that time as well, that this is something that can really help them. And I think that's a really important thing, that this is something for everybody, and it's about improving the health, the happiness of your horse, and improving performance along the way as well. It is, honestly, I find it really, really interesting. I totally want a cashel light mask for myself. I'm literally thinking, Barbara, how can I be a horse? Because it just, all of those benefits that you say, they all add up, don't they? And they really do. Yes, horses all respond differently, but ultimately we just want our horses to be as happy and as healthy as they can be. That's the aim. What else have you got on the horizon, Barbara? Because I know, there's so many exciting things and lots of different studies, and, the list goes on.
Well, something I'm really excited about at the moment, and I would love to ask anybody listening to this, or your audience, if they know of anybody who has a horse who suffers from equine Cushing's disease, also known as PPID. It's a debilitating condition of older horses where the neurons in a part of their brain just start to degenerate, and there's a load of stress hormone produced, and these poor animals, one of the characteristic signs is they grow this long curly hair coat. That's very uncomfortable for them. Their immune system is off. They get laminitis a lot. That's also often kind of involves the metabolic system as well. But if anybody knows anybody who has horses with equine Cushing's, we are just about to embark on a 12-month study, because a collaboration I had with the University of Kentucky in the last year showed that using the blue light mask on these horses reduced the growth of the heavy winter coat, or the heavy coat that these horses get. So we're going to do a larger trial to see if some of the other benefits that we see in our healthy horses, the improvements in immunity, the improvements in just their quality of life, whether we can measure this and also see more effect on their coats. So go to the UCD website, and we have lots of announcements about this trial, that we're looking for participants, and we can't do it without working with people who have these horses. So it would be very rewarding to be able to make the quality of life of these horses that, give us so much enjoyment, and our passion is for them, to be able to give a little bit back and be able to treat this condition a little bit better.
There you go, listeners. If that sounds like something that actually you think, do you know what, I know somebody that would be interested in that, or might be of interest to you, then get in touch. Either go to the UCD website or send Adventing Podcast a message, and we can pop you in touch with Barbara and see if it might be something that would help. Sam, Barbara, thank you so much. It has been really, really interesting. I love this topic. I find it fascinating. And I know that Barbara, so much work has gone into it over the years in order to get to this point, so much science, so much research as well. And it is completely ongoing. And Sam, from your perspective, it's really good to see how it's put into practice and, the actual first-hand experience of it. So thank you both.
No problem at all, Nicole. And I think it's not one of those, it's not an elite product either. I think a lot of people, it's very obviously a breeding product. It's very obviously a performance product. But, some of the gloomiest, darkest conditions that horses can live in are just sometimes those, you might have a horse in equestrian centre down the road and, the lighting isn't great. They're in an indoor barn during the day, and then they've got, as you say, that long winter ahead of them if they're living out and things like that, and just getting that mask on. It's the same as us. We're always saying to each other, particularly this time of year, it's a fairly gloomy old day, isn't it? Basically reflecting our own mood and how we feel. Mm-hmm. So look, it's great. It's great to bring that little perk into our horses' lives, and it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure working with Equilume. It's great.
It really is. And go and look at the website, equilume.com. If you've got any questions, send them in. I'm sure they would be only too happy to help. But as we say, it is an affordable option as well. It is something that is open to everybody. Barbara, Sam, thank you both very, very much. Listeners, we hope you've enjoyed a little bit of insight into the science behind Equilume. And we will have lots more coming up. We have got a very, very big Equilume interview as well for you before the end of the year. So stay tuned for that. But for now, that is all we've got time for. Barbara, Sam, thank you. Listeners, thank you. We'll be back very soon with more. Thank you for listening to the Equiratings Eventing podcast.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. And I look forward to having you back with us soon.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more.
Listeners, we'll speak to you again soon.